Good afternoon and welcome back to the Suburban Proletarian. My name is Greg and today's video is going to be a little bit of an experiment. Our heat wave seems to have passed. It's much more comfortable today, but it's still way too hot to shoot upstairs in the studio, so I thought I'd try shooting a video out here on the side porch. So the problem is this video may end up looking a bit stilted because although my house is in a small town on what would appear to be a small suburban street, all of the traffic, or I would say maybe 50 to 75% of the traffic from a large swath of southeastern and south central Pennsylvania going out this way is passing directly past my house to go to Easton and Bethlehem and North Jersey and New York City and all of New England. Almost all of it is passing right by my house about 100 feet over this way. So I'm going to try to edit out as much traffic noise as possible in an effort to keep it from being too terribly distracting. But so I'm going to have to kind of talk in machine gun bursts, and it may end up being a little disjointed looking. But anyway, I've already chosen to title this project The Many Faces of Spyderco. This is more of a video about my personal journey through the world of Spyderco. It's been going on for about 25 years or so. It's more or less a state of the collection, although I'm a little bit uncomfortable using that phrase. That would imply that I have a collection or that I'm a collector. I buy individual knives on the basis of how they appeal to me, how useful I think they might be, and oftentimes value. A lot of people in discussing value use the term biggest bang for your buck. I might actually take it a bit further. I always look for the smallest buck for my bang. I'm always looking for a good deal. I love flash sales. Amazon one-click shopping is not your best friend. I'm living proof of that. Or I should say my poverty is living proof of that. But anyway, I want to take a look at the Spydercos that I have. And we're going to be taking a look at actual Spydercos, like the Tenacious in this box. Bird Knives, which some of you probably already know, some of you may not, is a sub-brand of Spyderco. And then some, I wouldn't say high-end knives, but some higher-end knives, like the all stainless Delica, which I reviewed just the other day, and also some oldies that I've had for a long time, like this Wayne Goddard Clip-It. So I guess the best thing to do at this point is to get inside, away from the traffic noise, take a look at what I've got, and then we'll come back out here and do a wrap up. All right, guys, so here it is. Such as it is, my Spyderco collection. I mean, if this actually was a state of the collection, if this was a dedicated Spyderco collection, and I did consider myself a Spyderco collector, which I don't, this would be a pretty weak collection. I mean, wouldn't it? But it is representative of the knives that I've had going back 25 years. There are a few knives that aren't represented here. There was at least one second generation Endura, which is no longer here, and there were a couple of second or third generation Delicas, all in glass reinforced nylon. I've never had a Spyderco fail on me, and I've never sold a Spyderco that I can remember. So anything that isn't here has either gotten lost or was more likely gifted to somebody who could use it more than I. One that is conspicuously missing here, if anyone's been paying attention to the channel, you will notice that the Spyderco Dragonfly 2, which I probably would have put right here, and that I reviewed a month to 2 months ago, is not here. Obviously, my wife decided she liked it very much, and of course it fit her hand much better than mine, and she kind of, I guess, confiscated it, or I gifted it to her for her use, whatever. Anyway, it's in her purse. She's at work. so it didn't make it into the video, but that one's still around. But anyway, this is most of the Spyderco or Spyderco related knives that I've owned over the last 25 years. Most of them are represented here. A couple of these knives I've reviewed already, sort of in depth. Most of them have not been reviewed. Those reviews are coming up, and this is not meant to be an in-depth look at any one of these knives, just sort of a quick overview of where I've been. So without any further ado, let's start at the very beginning. I already showed this knife the other day in my review of my new Delica 4, and this is the very, very, very first Spyderco I ever purchased. This is the first generation Endura. The Endura and the Delica came out at the same time in 1990. They both came out as lightweight glass reinforced nylon models. And this was just an incredible knife when I first got it. It was the first knife I'd ever handled with a pocket clip. And this is the early first generation molded in pocket clip, which was meant to be very fragile. Well, I don't think it was meant to be very fragile, but a lot of people have said that it was very fragile. A lot broke, and at a later point in time, this was beefed up, made a bit larger, kind of like the pocket clip on this Cold Steel Voyager Tanto. And I don't think it's any secret that when Spyderco brought out their Voyager line, not only did they resemble the early glass reinforced Spydercos in many ways, but Spyderco actually assisted them in developing their clip, in developing their backlock system. But you can see that this is an early knife. It's all pinned construction, no screws. It doesn't have the Boyd dent. It has a straight tip instead of the modern dropped tip. But this was the first knife I'd ever seen with a pocket clip and one-handed opening and a functional, fully serrated blade. So I mean, that was just amazing at the time. It's still a pretty great knife. I just don't carry it anymore because I don't want to break the clip. So, and this knife just has some sentimental value. I managed not to lose it or break it, so I'm holding on to that. The second knife I want to take a quick look at is this Wayne Goddard Clip-It in Spyderco's sort of trademark, I don't know, I think it's meant to be black, but in certain lights it looks sort of olive drab or brown. Linen micarta. Unlike the glass reinforced nylon Endura, this was a much higher end knife. I believe this knife was manufactured by Moki in Japan for Spyderco. This is beautifully constructed, all hand built, very slim. I mean, you can see it's a large knife, and it has a fairly hand-filling grip. But thanks to the fact that it's the handle scales, the micarta handle scales actually form the frame of the knife. You can see there's no liners here. It is incredibly thin. This knife just absolutely disappears in your pocket. And when you compare it with another large... Alright, so my lovely wife just came back from work, and there's the Dragonfly, which she is now using. It is really too small for my hand, which is strange because the Bird Robin 2 is not, but the Dragonfly is a bit too small for my hand. I'm starting to get arthritis, and it's hard for me to grip on very small things. It's even difficult to open this one-handed. Not that I can't do it, but it's a little bit painful. But anyway, there's another piece of the collection. We won't need to cover that now. But anyway, I was talking about the Wayne Goddard Clip-It, and you can see it's a large knife. It's easily as large as the Endura, but thanks to its very thin design, it just absolutely disappears in your pocket. You would never know you were carrying a knife this large. One thing to keep in mind regarding these early micarta knives, if you get one, these are mostly collector's pieces now. They're really going up in value. So most people aren't carrying them, but if you do decide to carry one of these old micarta knives, particularly the Wayne Goddard, there are no metal liners inside these handle scales. So the holes that the pocket clip screws go into are drilled and tapped, threaded right into the micarta, making them extremely fragile. I've never removed this pocket clip or reinstalled it, obviously, and I don't intend to, and I would advise against it for anyone. And if you do carry one of these knives, particularly using the pocket clip, I would be very, very careful about that. These things are, in fact, going up in value. This one's probably not worth all that much. I've carried it a lot. I've used it a lot. There's a fair amount of circular wear here from opening and closing. Most of the black paint is missing out of the Wayne Goddard signature. So this is not a collector's piece, but even as it stands, it's probably worth several $100s. And unlike the first knife I bought, the Endura, I think I paid about $100 for this new. And it's done nothing but go up in value. And it's kind of a neat knife, but I don't carry it anymore either. And my interests are constantly shifting, so I carried a lot of knives from other brands, and I didn't buy anything Spyderco related for quite a few years. And then, I don't know, about 5 to 7 years ago, I was at our local Cabela's after Christmas time. They had a lot of stuff on clearance, and there was a little knife that looked vaguely Spyderco-ish in a green cardboard box with a bird logo on it, and the bird writing looked very similar to Spyderco writing, and I'm like, what kind of a knockoff is Cabela's selling? I had no idea about bird knives. And then I looked at the box, and of course it turns out this is in fact a Spyderco product. And I bought this knife on a whim for 12 bucks. It's actually quite a bit more substantial than the Dragonfly, for instance. It's thicker, it has stainless steel liners, it's just a little bit bulkier. The forward choil and the jimping on the back of the blade here allow you to really choke up and allows the rest of the grip to fill your hand. It performs like a much larger knife. And I've been nothing but impressed with this knife, and it really kind of turned me on to bird and got me reinvigorated in Spyderco, I think. Not that I ever really lost my enthusiasm, but... So what would be next chronologically? Oh, one thing I wanted to show you. There are a couple of knives up here that aren't actual Spydercos. This is a knife made by a company called Moki, also in Seki City, Japan. This is the MK920. And the reason I have this out here is Moki was actually one of the prime contractors for Spyderco in Japan, manufacturing knives. Moki is still making knives under their own name. They still sell their own knives. They tend to be rather expensive, and they're generally not really available in the United States. Moki tends to use exotic woods. They tend to use stainless steel bolsters or other exotic materials. This was the only sort of bargain basement Moki I was ever aware of that came with a glass reinforced nylon handle. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I thought I would throw it in. Here's a little weird knife up here. As you may or may not know, I've been buying some off-brand stuff directly from China recently. And I bought this knife to review. This was ridiculously cheap. I think $12 shipped from China. And yeah, it's a little garish with the green and gold. It's a little bit ugly, but it's made by a company called Sanrenmu in China. And the reason I have it out here on the table is Sanrenmu, I believe, I have it on fairly reliable authority, that Sanrenmu is one of the contractors in China which is manufacturing knives for Spyderco today. So they're kind of a Chinese equivalent of Moki, not really the same quality, or certainly they don't command the same prices, but they are a Spyderco subcontractor. I'm pretty sure of that. Now, one thing I'm not sure about is, do they manufacture knives for Spyderco's value series, like the Tenacious here, or are they manufacturing Spyderco's bird knives? Hard to say. Also, these Chinese companies tend to be these huge conglomerates, sometimes with many different factories, and this particular Sanrenmu may not be made in the same factory as the Chinese Spyderco. So I really don't know. I just thought that was an interesting aside as well. Although I have to say, for a $12 knife, and despite its rather weird styling, it is incredibly well made. I mean, you look at the grind on the blade, all of the flats on this blade are dead flat. The machine marks are very, very minor and very, very consistent. The polish is wonderful. It's actually a really, really nice knife. I just actually got it yesterday. It has this wrench in here, which incorporates 4, 6, 8, and 10 millimeter wrench sizes. I don't know how useful that is. Although, as we all know, if you work on Japanese motorcycles or European cars, the 10 millimeter wrench is the one that's always missing. So that could come in handy. Anyway, Sanrenmu, another sort of Spyderco sideline. So where do we go next? Next we will look at this is the Byrd Caracara Rescue 2. It's the analog equivalent of the Spyderco Endura. This doesn't even say Caracara on it, it says Rescue 2, and it's very much like the Spyderco Rescue knives. Fully serrated, straight blade. I bought this mostly because I don't carry my Endura 1 anymore, and this was the only fully serrated knife I owned. I wanted another fully serrated knife, and I got this one from Amazon for, I think, $22. The quality, as with other Byrd knives I've reviewed, the quality is quite good. It opens and closes very smoothly. It locks up very positively. And I did do the zip tie Emerson sort of hack on this one. Generally not in favor of that, but this is one knife I may have to open fairly quickly. These do work, despite the fact that they're really ugly. And, well, I mean, this knife's not exactly going to be winning any beauty contests anyway. But apparently quite good quality. And that's one reason that I am such a huge fan of Spyderco. Most knife companies manufacture some good high-end knives at high prices. And then many of them, some like Benchmade and Microtech, they only really make sort of more expensive high-end knives. But a lot of the other companies like, you know, Gerber and Buck and Kershaw, they'll make some high-end expensive knives and then they'll range down and the knives get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and they get kind of flimsier and flimsier and flimsier and a little bit more rattly and the blade centering gets off. But that is not the case with Spyderco. These Byrd knives, the Spyderco value models, as they get cheaper, they just, you know, the fit and finish may not be quite as good. They may be a little bit rougher around the edges, but they're still extremely solid. They still perform extremely well. And that's one thing I really admire about Spyderco. Sal Glesser does not put his name on anything that he doesn't think is going to do the job when it's called upon to do it. I reviewed this just the other day. This is a new Delica 4 in stainless steel. As you can see, I mentioned that these scratch very easily in that review. I've been carrying this for like 3 days now and it's already all scratched up. So keep that in mind. I don't have much else to say about this. I'm very impressed with it so far. Again, I always wanted an all stainless, and I actually had this one on back order already for quite a while. This took a long time to come from Amazon. I'll talk about that next. And when I got this, I was a little bit concerned that I bought it. I didn't want to get an Endura because I thought the Endura was going to be too big. But then I got this knife and I thought, oh, it's a little bit small, isn't it? I thought maybe I should have gotten the all stainless Endura instead of the Delica, but I've been pretty happy with this so far. And then this arrived in the mail yesterday. Now again, this is another Caracara, so it's the analog equivalent of the Endura. So this is basically what an all stainless Endura would be like. And no, I was exactly right to get the Delica rather than pay $120 for a Spyderco branded version of this. This is quite large and quite heavy. I do like the flat ground blade. I think this is going to get a lot of use in the kitchen rather than getting carried around. I'll be reviewing that one as well as some of these other knives in the future. So there's that. And then last but not least, this is another one I'm going to be reviewing very soon. Well, actually, it is the least, but it's not the worst. None of these are bad. So this is the new Spyderco Grasshopper. And the Grasshopper is part of Spyderco's Slip It line. These are slip joint knives. There's no locking system on this. And as you can see, it's basically a tiny little version of the stainless steel Endura or the stainless steel Delica. It's just not a locking model. And these are legal in the UK. There are two smaller ones. There's the Honeybee and the Bug, which are just tiny little keychain knives. I am not a fan of keychain knives. Most of the people I know who carry their knives on their keychain are not knife people, and their knives are usually extremely dull and beat up. This one's actually, you know, penknife sized. You can actually get 3 fingers on this. It performs well. Although this is made in China, it's not made from HCR13 MOV. It's actually made from Sandvik 12C27, a Swedish steel of somewhat higher quality, I think, than the Chinese steels. Very, very tight. No side-to-side play. Opens very smoothly. That's a knife that I'm going to be reviewing again also very soon. So that was maybe the least in terms of size, but it definitely wasn't the last. I almost overlooked my favorite new Spyderco, and this is the Tenacious. And this is part of Spyderco's new value line, made in China. It is made from HCR13 MOV. Full flat grind blade, which is a really, really nice slicer. G10 handles. It is a liner lock, but it locks up perfectly. I'm not generally a huge fan of liner locks, but this one's done very nicely. It's not sticky at all, and it locks up very positively. And this knife just feels really nice in my hand. The amazing thing about this knife is it stands a really good chance of knocking my other favorite carry knife out of its top position, my D2 Benchmade Griptilian. This knife is absolutely fantastic. I love it. I think I've talked about it on the channel before. I'll certainly be talking about it again. But this is a $120 minimum American-made knife with the very, very highest credentials. And it feels very good in the hand. Now the D2 blade does hold an excellent edge. You can work with this thing all day without having to touch it up. Great, great knife. But I'm telling you, this Tenacious just feels perfect in the hand. It's the perfect size. I'll be reviewing this one in an upcoming video. Can't say enough good things about this knife. Or really any of these knives. Spyderco knives are just fantastic across the board. They may not be the very, very best knives in the world, but they don't do anything bad. And that's what really, really impresses me. They're all solid performers. I've never come up against a Spyderco or Spyderco sub-brand product that didn't do what it was designed to do. And I have encountered that in almost every other knife manufacturer. So anyway, let's go do the wrap up. I'm sure I've talked way too long about this already, and it'll give me time to get started on the individual reviews of some of these knives. But this is basically just what to look forward to coming up. Alright, so that's a state of the collection, such as it is. Again, I'm not a collector, I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys buying knives. And this isn't really a collection, it's just a confederation of knives that I have used and enjoyed over the years. Collectors tend to have a plan, collections tend to have a theme and a purpose. I just don't want anyone to get the idea that I consider myself a collector, because I don't. I have considered becoming a Spyderco collector and selling off the rest of my knives to fund new acquisitions and exclusively collecting Spyderco. But of course that would mean I'd have to get rid of my classic old cold steel knives and my Benchmade D2 Griptilian and a bunch of other knives that I love using. I know myself. I know that right now I'm just crazy about Spyderco, and I've been buying some new stuff, trying some new things out, making some videos. But 6 months from now, my mind is probably going to be somewhere completely different. I don't have any intention of getting rid of most of these knives. I probably do need to thin out my collection somewhat, get rid of some dead wood. But for the most part, most of the knives I have, I enjoy. I'll probably end up sending some of this stuff to eBay. Not my Spydercos, I don't think, but some of the lower end stuff that I'm just not really using anymore, I'll probably end up sending off to eBay or maybe gifting to people who would enjoy them also, or enjoy them more than I'm doing at the moment. And I'm sure that this video is probably long enough at this point. This was not meant to be an in-depth review of any of the knives that we looked at today. I've done more in-depth reviews of a few of them. Those which I haven't already reviewed in detail, I will be doing so hopefully in the near future. I want to take a closer look at all these knives. I really like to work my way all the way through my collection, such as it is. So watch for those coming up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and click the like button down below. If you hated it, go ahead and click the dislike button. You won't hurt my feelings at all. Well, you might hurt my feelings a little bit, but don't worry about my feelings. Your feedback helps me to determine what kind of content to generate for future installments. If you did enjoy this video and you think you'd like to see more like it in the future, please consider subscribing to my channel. Each and every subscription goes a long way to help keeping me here on the air. It only takes a fraction of a second to subscribe. It doesn't cost a dime. And of course, if you think I suck in the future, you can always unsubscribe. If you have friends who you think would enjoy seeing any of my videos, please go ahead and share the videos using the little share arrow down below. And if you're already a subscriber, go ahead and click the little bell icon down below. That will allow YouTube to send you notifications when I post updates to the channel. And when I do that, I hope to see each of you here at that time. Later, guys.